It's time for the Wally and Methot Show, presented by SportsInteraction.com. Now, here are your hosts, Brent Wallace and Marc Methot.
Welcome to the Wally and Methot Show, everybody. I'm Brent Wallace. He's Marc Methot. If we're a little bit slower today, it's because we were overserved by a shirtless guy wearing a bike helmet in a bar last night.
Yeah, I just saw that. I woke up this morning, Wally, it was 6:30, and I'm like crawling out of bed. Kids just woke up. And I've got a video of Brady behind the bar. And what was he wearing? Was he wearing what do you have on? I'm gonna have to look at it again. Something insane and he was rocking the bike helmet and the glasses.
So good on Brady Tkachuk, by the way. If you haven't seen it, it's on Twitter. Brady Tkachuk is serving last night. I'm assuming that's the year-end party or after party that the boys had, as they always do before they venture out to parts unknown.
Yeah, and we're not trying to act like TMZ here. I mean, this is common. This is common every year with every team, with a lot of players. Guys are just having a very good time. They're interacting with fans. So let's be clear. There's nothing unprofessional about it. In my opinion, we need way more of that. It's great. He's interacting with fans. He's having a good time. He's not saying no to the camera or no to pictures. I love that.
Here's my concern, though, Meth. He just signed a new deal, and now he's already had to take a part-time job to make ends meet.
I wonder if he had to share tips with everybody at the end of the night. But
you imagine the tips?
That'd be great. It looked like they were at Matty. It's a restaurant on Elgin. That's my guess. It was like a nice restaurant there, and I know the manager there is a great guy, takes care of the players. So I'm assuming that's where they were at. But it looked like a good time. I'm jealous.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to get to Brady. One more thing in a sec. Today's show brought to you by SportsInteraction.com. Go to SportsInteraction.com/Wally and Methot for the most competitive live daily odds. By the way, all their Stanley Cup odds are up, obviously, as they start to begin the playoffs tonight on the Monday. We'll follow it through. At the end of the show, Meth's already excited. We're going to pick our first round winners and our eventual Stanley Cup champion. I'm sure Meth has something to say. Back to Brady Tkachuk for a sec. So I meant to bring this up to him the other day when he was on, and I totally forgot because I'm old, is if he was in Toronto, New York, I'll say all the big markets, Boston, Philadelphia, he would be a commercial success. He would be everywhere. And I think it's disappointing, or I don't know what the word is, but it's disappointing, I guess, to see that the Brady doesn't get the kind of attention here in Ottawa. Like, I think he should be on almost every commercial in this city. He is a fantastic person to have around. He's a spokesman that you probably want for your company. And that's one of the arguments that we'll get to later in the show about free agents coming here, is it's a wasteland when it comes to all this commercial endorsement stuff afterwards. Like Sidney Crosby makes more in endorsements, right? And Austin Matthews and Alex Ovechkin, all these guys. I think Brady could be in that type of stratosphere if he were being a big market.
So are we going to talk about this later? Do you want me to unpack now? It's up to you.
Oh, let's do it.
Okay, well, whatever. It's not a big deal. I was going to say, so when Dion Phaneuf came to Ottawa after the trade, and I was already friends with D, we had played at the World Championship, so I was pretty familiar with him and friendly. And I would grill him all the time about Toronto and just the different experiences, because I was not very familiar with playing in a big market. Now, granted, the Toronto Maple Leafs are a different animal altogether. It's like hockey mecca, maybe outside of Montreal. So, but he would always talk about the endorsement deals, and he wouldn't just go out there and gloat about them, or I would have to kind of get it out of him. But the money out there that's available for players, and I'm not just talking about star players. I'm talking
Jason
about role players
Spezza is doing a Sonnet commercial.
I know. The money, and it's not exclusive to Toronto. There are other cities, a lot of other cities that do this too. Edmonton's another one, Montreal, where the amount of money some of these players make outside of their salaries is insane. So you mentioned Brady Tkachuk, such a marketable player. I mean, the personality, and he backs it up on the ice, right? He scores goals.
Yes.
He's your captain. He fights, he hits, he does whatever. So, it's unfortunate, but I feel like this team's going to take a big step forward here very soon, as we all know. And, I can't think of a better player to lead the helm. So I think at some point over the next couple of years, hopefully there's some more opportunities for these Ottawa Senator guys, because they deserve it, particularly a guy like Brady.
I just never understand Ottawa, because I believe the last commercial I think I've ever seen with a player, and I'm going to be obviously wrong, perhaps.
It's weird.
Is Jason Spetz's Jubilee Fine Jeweler or whatever it was, right? Like they're never used in local commercial.
I don't get it.
Events. I don't understand it. And so
I know.
one of the comments, we're going to be way off topic here. So one of the comments is from Pierre Dorion at the year-end presser was attracting free agents, right? And you and I have talked about this before, attracting free agents to Ottawa and the struggles that come with coming to Canada, which I think is overblown when it comes to Ottawa, because coming to Ottawa is not like going to Toronto or Montreal or Vancouver. It's a very quiet media base here in Ottawa. It's very small. So I think that's an excuse that doesn't hold water, but all the other stuff, and so taxes and all that, you need to find free agents that will come here. Commercial endorsements would be a huge one if that were me. If I'm not, like, if you're a high end player and you're making six figures in a commercial endorsement somewhere else, that's a big drop if you're just coming to play hockey in Ottawa.
Yeah, and it's the same story that we seem to talk about all the time, and when we're talking about attracting free agents, right? And it's, what do you have to offer that other teams don't? Well, yeah. And I'm not going to get into it because I love this city, obviously, and I love the team. But I mean, when you're not necessarily a great hockey team and you're already in a small market like Ottawa, that's, you know, as we all know, we pay taxes up the rear here to play here in comparison to these other cities. I mean, it doesn't make it very attractive. But the one thing Ottawa has now, finally, is a nice young core that's progressing and like significant. This isn't just us blowing smoke up the team's butt. Like, this is legitimately a very exciting time for the organization. And I think everyone's a little apprehensive to get too excited because we know they're like right there and you just don't want the team to screw this up, right? You want them to make this work. So, you know, I think they're going to be just fine, but with all these young players right now, it couldn't be a more exciting time to be following the team.
Fair enough. By the way, it's an exciting time. Perhaps crack open a Whitewater beer. As always, the show brought to you by Whitewater Beer. Just go to shopwhitewater.ca. Use the Wally and Methot coupon code, which is WHAM-FunkyFresh. Get 15% off. And you can use it for the Funky Fresh, or they have a new one out. It's called North and South. It's very good. It's got some different flavors from like New Zealand and I don't know, Norway or whatever it is. I can't read the can at the moment, but very good. It's fresh. Nice. I like it.
Okay.
That's at shopwhitewater.ca, brewed by friends, for friends, the official beer of the Hockey Hall of Fame, which I guess should have been our sponsor for the entire Daniel Alfredson episode. We'll move on now to yesterday and all the talk surrounding Pierre Dorion. Let's just get the quote out of the way because it seemed to be the biggest news of the day. TSN 1200 quoted Pierre Dorion by saying, "We won't be spending to the top of the cap unless we sell out all 41 games." Well, that caused a little bit of a stir on the old social media machine. They left out some other stuff, but one of the things that they took out the context of it, and Pierre Dorion, who likes to do at press conferences, which I think he should stop. I think he's a terrible person to have at press conferences because he likes to make jokes and thinks it's funny to make light of stuff. That's what caused the problem. However, him saying that we need to sell out 41 home games is not exactly how the quote went, but it's also partially what he actually means, because they're not going to be spending to the cap. But if they had an entire season ticket base of 10,000 and sold out 41 games, we'd probably be in a different financial situation.
Yeah.
Were you, so what do you make of the comment?
Well, you obviously, Wally, so you had an issue with it, I'm assuming, right? Like, at least the quote itself, you had a problem with, right?
Well, so if you take the quote on Twitter as saying, you know, it's an ultimatum to the fans, that wasn't what it was. But it is a subtle shot that we want fans in the stands. There's no question that's a subtle shot.
Yeah. No, when I first read the quote, because it was weird, because I didn't know they were even doing a press conference, right? Like, I found out once 1200 on Twitter just started pumping out all these quotes, and I'm thinking like, oh, okay, I guess Pierre's doing a presser right now. So I didn't have time to actually sit down and watch it. So at first I saw the quote and I'm thinking like, oh man, but there had to be more to it. Just because I can't imagine Pierre just taking a shot at the fan base. And then of course, all the people that were really angry initially sort of retracted a little bit, right? Like, I still think Pierre probably woke up thinking like, oh, maybe I should have worded that differently. I think I understood what he meant. I think he's basically saying, you know, like, we're willing to spend a little bit more money if it makes our team better, but are we going to spend to the cap? Like, probably, like, it's a small market team, right? So he's saying, we'll spend to the cap if we happen to sell out all 41 games, but otherwise he's like, we just physically can't do that. We don't have the money to do it. Right. So that's how I interpreted it afterwards when I read the entire quote and saw the presser. But like I said, probably regretted the way he worded it. Cause as a personality, as you know, Wally, like anything that comes out of your mouth, people can adjust and cut it up at any certain point. So you can't give the media, especially if you're like an executive or you're a general manager, you can't give them that kind of ammunition. So again, I don't think he meant that in a bad way. It just probably came out poorly. And I think for me, I totally understand. I'm like, you can't expect this team to spend to the cap when they've been averaging 9,000 fans for most of the season. I mean, it's just not going to happen.
I completely agree. And you can't sell it all 41 games till the end of the year, because not all 41 games, the tickets are on sale at the beginning of the year. Right. So again, the quote, the problem I have with Pierre Dorion doing this stuff is he says it all the time. He says dumb stuff all the time. So it ends up at least once every presser. So I'm going to give you an example. When he made the comment about even Wayne Gretzky got traded, when he was talking about Erik Karlsson years ago.
Sure.
So everybody blew it up and was like, how can he say this? And so here's how this all played out. I went in the next day and asked to speak to Erik Karlsson, because Erik wasn't talking at the time, and said, I'd like to speak to Erik about this. And they're like, he's not talking. I'm like, I'd like to speak to Pierre Dorion. And they're like, well, he's not commenting. He spoke today on the radio. That's all he's got to say. I was like, okay. So I have to now go in the room and ask other players about the comment, because now these players are somewhat sour hearing that Erik Karlsson is likely to be traded based on a flippant comment by the general manager, who thought he was being funny at the time. The next day, or later that day, the three insiders at TSN, Bob McKenzie, Pierre Dorion, and Darren Dreger, all got a text saying, if Brent Wallace doesn't stop asking questions about trading Erik Karlsson to my players, I'm basically going to go stop talking to you. He said, use the term, I'm going to go dark. And it was just before the trade deadline. So he threatened to cut off all access if I didn't stop asking questions. So Pierre Dorion, the issue I have, he's too sensitive and he says too many dumb things when he comes to pressers. He's been given media training and he still can't handle it. I don't want to see him at pressers. It doesn't do a service to this organization.
Those are some strong words. Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to talk about his ethics because I'm obviously not aware of all the little things that he's doing behind the scenes, of course, but yeah, there are times where he can be very emotionally invested, and it's visible in his interviews, right? Like you can tell that he's passionate and he takes things very personally if they don't go the right way or whatever. So, I mean, I get it. It's not a job that I would want ever in my life, right? I mean, you're the amount of scrutiny that you're under on a daily basis, but it's the job and it's the position that he has right now. So you're entitled to want to ask questions. It's a sports business. It's entertainment. It's not that deep. And you are entitled to having answers. And I understand that. So I get it. So you're basically saying, Wally, that you don't like how Pierre handles some of these press conferences, because oftentimes he'll say something that's a little insensitive or might come across the wrong way. Is that what I'm gathering?
Yeah. He just says stuff that's just doesn't like, don't make jokes about it. He used to walk in the stands. And I think it was like in his first year, maybe second year. He's like, which 29th place team has more fun than we do? I'm like, this is not a time to be joking about where you're sitting in the standings. And so he, on one side, can go, well, we're just trying to have a little fun around here. It's just hockey. Maybe, but to a lot of people, it's their livelihoods. And they don't take it as funny when they're 29th in the league. And that's an issue. So it also filters out into the public, into ticket sales when you sit 29th. So all that stuff, don't make light of where you're at and try to be a little more professional than making jokes and talking about your girlfriend every time you're at a press conference. He acts like a child at press conferences. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. All right. Why don't we move on? Yeah, I don't. This feels personal. I'm not doing this.
So when it comes to DJ Smith, where do you rate his performance that he's had basically over the last 3 years? Is he the guy that you see leading this team into the postseason?
I mean, when a team is like, this is the way I look at it, Wally, when a team is going through a rebuild and you've got a very young core, particularly a year ago or 2 years ago, there's going to be a lot of growing pains. And from a fan's perspective, watching, you're going to be very critical of decisions at times, right? Roster moves, certain players. And that's to be expected. You know, like Zaitsev for me has been a head scratcher that I can only assume and imagine that DJ had a big role in that because he was familiar. Coaches tend to lean towards what they know and familiarity. I mean, I'm a good example of that when I went to Dallas, right? When I got picked up by Dallas, Ken Hitchcock was the coach there. Jason Spezza was there. So Jim Nill had people to talk to before going after me. And so this is no exception with DJ. So you can nitpick a couple decisions that he's made and be very critical of that. Maybe you could blame the GM on some of those moves as well. Maybe it's both. But for me, the biggest thing that I'm going to look at is how are the players responding to the coach, right? Like, I think the biggest indicator usually is in the dressing room. It isn't what us outsiders, how us outsiders feel. So the team's responding to him. They seem to like playing under him. He's probably a fairly good communicator with the group. They have respect for him. I think right now is the time to be critical. I think right now, going into next season in October, will be the time to be very critical. We can be critical now, of course, but I think now that they have an opportunity to really look at their lineup, it's more clear now than it ever has been as far as what kind of changes you want to make, right? There's two holes. You've got a hole in the second line up front. You've got a hole in the top four, maybe top five on defense. You fill those two holes, it should help. Now, I know we're going to get into this, Wally, and I don't want to kind of just cover everything, so I'll go to you in a second. I think for me, with DJ in particular, I'm satisfied with the job that he's done so far. Could there have been better decisions made along the way at times? Yes. I think that would apply to just about any coach. No coach is perfect, but I'm going to look at the group. They seem to respond well for him. They seem to respect him. That makes me happy. I think you have a short leash going into next year. Maybe not a short leash. I shouldn't word it that way. I think you got to give them the benefit right now. See how the team starts off next season. If it's a colossal fail again, then you can start looking at the GM and coach very critically, because that'll have been 3 years in a row with a terrible start.
Okay. I was just going to ask this question. So each of the last 2 years, they've started basically 5 wins in their first 20 games.
Yep.
There's
reasons for that.
Okay. So who's at fault for this?
Yeah. Well, the number one right now is your goaltending. Your goaltending was a colossal cluster F-bomb. I mean, you had nobody, right? And you didn't have Forsberg. He wasn't there in his emergence. You had Matt Murray last year. That was a disaster for the most part. Being a number one guy making 6 or whatever he's making. I mean, he had to be much better. And yeah, we have to be honest. And I like Murray. I've met him. His agent is one of my close friends. I went on a vacation with him a couple months ago. So I hear enough, but his agent doesn't tell me very much, in fairness. But in any case, the biggest issue for me was goaltending, because without a goalie, you're pooched. You can't win games.
Yep.
They're supposed to be there to steal hockey games for you occasionally when the team's not that sharp. They never got that. They finally started getting that consistency after Christmas in Forsberg's emergence, and it's just stabilized the group. Now, they weren't perfect. They still have much more. Like, I'm looking at their lineup here, and I know we're going to get into it. I mean, they're very thin still. A couple injuries to this lineup is disastrous. Right?
Yes.
Like, you look at what happens. That's how thin they are. And they know that. This is no secret. This is not me being hypocritical. But I think the biggest turnaround for me, at least, aside from, the nice changes like Stützle and Formanton and all the emergence of some of these players, goaltending was the biggest factor in the lack of success early on.
Okay. Let's just go to the lineup. Craig, throw up the lineup when you have a sec. If we look at that hole in the second line, all right, so we'll say second line right winger. You said there's only one hole at forward, and I completely disagree. DJ alluded to Mark Kastelik as perhaps needing another year in the minors. I don't see Parker Kelly, Mark Kastelik being on the same line to start this year. I could be wrong, but I still think if I'm not sold that Alex Formanton at the moment is a top 6 forward. I know he had 18 goals. I know he played well at times. There was also stretches he didn't. Where does Matthew Joseph fit in? Yes, there's no question he's a third line guy. Is he potentially a second line guy? Maybe, but I'm not sure about that. I think, Matt, and I'm dead serious on this. There is one person on that roster that will not be in the lineup come next September that we've already penciled in. I think there's going to be moves in order to bring in someone that's a free agent or through a trade to be a top 6 winger that's going to have to move somebody off that roster.
Okay. So okay. All right.
Here's who I think.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm not, this isn't trying to be a hot take. I can see Alex Formanton or Matthew Joseph being moved, and perhaps Connor Brown. But
I could see that too. It's funny. It's funny. Yeah.
I just think Connor Brown to me is the unsung hero on that forward group. He doesn't get the attention. He leads them all in ice time. He's always gets to be filled in. You can put him on the 1 to 4 lines. He can potentially score 20 goals. I know this year wasn't.
It's funny you say that. It's funny you say that, Wally, because yesterday, same thought process as you. I thought I was sitting down, like writing all these notes, and half the time I don't use half of them, but I was looking at some of the players, as you just mentioned, and I look at Formanton as well. That's another good example where I'm thinking like, you could probably move him. I love the player. It's not about that. It's just about where you fit in the lineup. And when you start piling in all these third line type players, that lack maybe a little finish, like Formanton, Joseph might not be, I might be wrong about Joseph. I quite frankly haven't seen him play enough to like, cause I'm still in the belief you end up on a new organization during the season, you're going to be on fire for a couple weeks because you're just running on adrenaline. It's the same, anytime you trade a player, you saw that with Nick Paul when he went to Tampa, same thing. You're just playing out of your mind because you're trying to survive. This is a real thing. I've experienced it. So I could see look at all these third line kind of guys you have on this team, right? And so, you like Gaudette, Formanton, Joseph, you can make an argument there. Like there's a lot of guys that are like those role types that have emerged a little bit, but they've emerged a little bit because maybe they were getting a lot more ice time. They were given an opportunity with some good players and they were able to, but my concern is guys like Matthew Joseph, guys like Alex Formanton, is that sustainable for a full season? Like, are you a legitimate second line forward? That's the question mark that I have. So I'm not disagreeing with you, Wally. Like with Tim Stützle slotted in on that second line center, who are his wingers? Like because he's going to be a special player. He needs at least a legitimate top 6 forward to play with, right? On that right or left side. So who's he going to play with? I mean, that's why I think guys like Pierre Dorion and DJ were, when asked about their roster or expectations for next season, I think a lot of it is, we just don't know what we have yet.
Yes.
Ask us. And that's in fairness to them. We could be critical of their jobs, but how do they know? They have no idea. Like this lineup might look significantly different in September at training camp.
Exactly. And if you want to make a trade to get a player to come in, because you can't do it via free agency,
you need to send a good warm body.
You got to send somebody. So that's, I just think there's going to be potentially like 3 moves and that we don't see coming that'll ultimately alter this lineup. And we see it every year. To Pierre's credit, he's not shy to make moves.
No. Like he'll make moves. And this is because again, I got to defend him a little bit. Like I'm sure there's been some constraints when it comes to the financial stuff, right? So that affects your free agency. That affects who you're going after. That affects who you're able to bring back in. So I'm hoping they make a good splash this summer, and that'll just answer all the questions. That way, Pierre and company can't say, well, at least they can say, I should say, at least we did something this summer. We got the good player. So if there are injuries that happen next season early on, or if there is a lack of success, he can say he's done his job. But I'd love those open-ended question marks to get answered so that people don't have those excuses. Like, well, you guys didn't do anything this summer. So what do you expect? We're going to be critical. You've just lost 5 of your first games. So I'm hoping they do that, but there's some players I still don't know where they slot in. Like I'm looking at players like Gambrell, Gaudette. Like, I don't know where they fit. Like Tierney's obviously gone. Kastelik, I think, is going to be back. I think that was a carefully worded statement by the team because they don't want him to think that his job's been handed to him. He's a centerman, big responsibility. I get that they don't want him playing 7 to 9 minutes a game or whatever it is in his developmental years. But at the same time, if he's NHL ready and that's going to be his role, I don't foresee Mark Kastelik being a second line centerman. He's going to be a role type player for his career. Probably. That's a great thing. It's not an insult. I think he's ready. I think he can. I think he's responsible in his own end. He's pretty good on draws. He's strong. He can defend himself. I don't see a reason why they don't have him next year. It's 82 games. Totally. But I think a play like we saw Parker Kelly. I'm comfortable with him and Parker Kelly on the same line. I just don't know where Austin Watson fits. That's going to be my concern.
Austin Watson had 10 goals.
I know that, but I watched him play a lot throughout the year. I thought his game really looked great toward the end of the season there. He was playing very physical. But so are you going to have a line of Parker Kelly, Mark Kastelik, and Austin Watson on the right side? I guess you could. That'd be a nightmare to play against. I just hope that they can kind of keep it together and play, intelligent enough for 82 games. That's going to be my issue with that line.
I totally agree. I think the issue is consistency on a nightly basis. And this is not a shot at Mark Kastelic. We've seen it. Tim Stützle went through it. This is not a shot at any particular player. It is a tough grind to play 82 games at the National Hockey League level when you're not used to it. You have to assimilate yourself into that environment. Yeah. And he plays hard minutes. Like, you can't play a fourth line role and not play hard minutes regardless of how many they are. Agreed.
So I think the top line in closing here for this topic, at least, I think we can both agree top line is fine. I like Batherson. I want Batherson playing with Norris and Tkachuk. Agreed. I don't want to separate them. I like them together. I think you're right, Wally, to your point from earlier, maybe a player or two, for sure. One player, two's unrealistic. They're not going after 2 top 6 guys, but definitely 1 top 6 this summer. I think it's a must. Like, I looked at some of the free agents that were available, and I'm trying to think, without the Sens bias that I carry, of course, you guys, like, there's Forsberg's out there. Rust is another free agent. Obviously Fiala. There's a couple guys I'm trying to think that are realistic acquisitions, because I'm not going to go for the big heavy hitters. They would just want to win. They're not coming to a rebuild team in Ottawa. So you have to separate yourself from that, right?
That's a lot of money, though. Like, Kevin Fiala is not Peter Forsberg. Philip Forsberg is not cheap.
Oh no, Forsberg's not coming here. I know that. He's staying. So, first of all, he's not coming. He's not going from Nashville, a sellout barn in Tennessee on no state tax, on a winning team, no less, and signing in Ottawa. Like, so people need to get that out of their minds right away. I was throwing a couple random free agents out there.
Yeah. No, and I appreciate it. I just think it's going to have to be a trade. I think they're going to have to almost force the player to come here. If that makes sense.
It's not beneficial for Ottawa to throw the kitchen sink at somebody through free agency. It's too much money with all the pending guys that they need to sign. It's just, I don't see it happening anyway.
So let's switch to the D. Speaking of people on the move, how about Boyd Moving? Want better pay, more respect, and more job security? It's time to move to Boyd Moving. If you're an experienced mover, truck driver, or just hardworking go-getter who wants rewarding work, then it's time to turn your job into a career. Apply today at boydcareers.ca. Boyd Moving. We keep Ottawa moving. You know what would be a fun time, the three of us, would be if you, myself, and Bobby Ryan were movers for a day. How do you think that would play out?
Why is that? No, it's not fun at all. I don't want to do that.
The two of you would stuff me in a box and tape me up somewhere.
Yeah, that would be fun. And then I'd leave and go grab a beer somewhere or something. But yeah, I mean, that's not my style. Anyway, no, I get it, but no, not happening.
It'd be fun. All right. Okay. So on the blue line.
Yep.
Which typically takes up about a third of our entire show, every show.
We won't go too long. Don't worry.
So let's just say Thomas Chabot and Artem Zub are the top D pair next year. I still don't believe that that's going to be the case. Where do all these people fit in? So, and I mean all these people: Holden, Zaitsev, Hamonic, Thompson, Delzato. I understand Thompson doesn't have to be there. Brandstrom, they have to re-sign, or I guess they don't, but they will, obviously. Holden, and then you got Jake Sanderson, who, again, now he's back in a cast for 6 more weeks with his wrist. This is a blue line of unanswered questions for sure.
Yeah. Well, okay. I want Shabbat should be playing with Zub. I think. I mean, you could split them up when you're thin and there are injuries, but the way they play together and how complimentary Zub is, you want to get the most out of your all-star stallion defenseman back there, right? Like, if you got Thomas Chabot in his prime at the moment, you need to take full advantage of that, and he'll be far more productive. Give him Zub. Let him play with Zub. Figure out your bottom 4 from there, right? So, Holden is a lock for me in the lineup. I know he slowed down a little at the end of the season, but we don't know what players are dealing with and the struggles that are going on in the room. I like his game. He's reliable. That leaves the second pairing open right now. And the second pairing for me, assuming Sanderson comes in, this is all a bet, right? Like, we're all just projecting, but we don't know for sure what he's going to look like at the NHL level. Right. But if he is as good as everybody says he is, then after training camp, I'm assuming he'll be on that left side on the second pairing.
He's going to get 10 games regardless. Like,
right. So give him, and he has time now, right? He's unfamiliar with most of these players. So you bring in a free agent or another defenseman through trade. you put him with him. A top five defenseman. It doesn't need to be a top 2 or a top 4. A player that's competent enough to go up and down the ice with them and can keep up and just pass them the puck. You know what I mean? So yes, I'm making it sound pretty easy. I'm oversimplifying it, but bring in a top 4. So again, back to the old story that we always talk about: top 6 up front, top 4 on D. And then on the bottom pairing with Holden on the right side, it'll be a dogfight. You've got Thompson, you got JBD, and you got Eric Brandstrom. I know they're very interested in re-signing Brandstrom. And you know, he looked better at the end of the season. I'm going to refrain from going any deeper than that. I do like the individual. I like how hard he works. So if you do find a player, you got a guy like Nick Holden, I'm actually pretty comfortable playing Holden and Brandy together. So that's probably where I'm at now. So go for your top 4 to find a partner for Sanderson on the second pairing, and it'll be an immediate upgrade from what they've had this year.
Okay. So do you honestly think the Ottawa Senators are going to sign Josh Norris, Alex Formanton, Matthew Joseph to deals and Eric Brandstrom and still bring in a top 6 and a top 4?
Well, they're going to have to trade. They're going to have to make a trade.
I don't see this. Yeah, but it's the money. I don't see this happening.
Well, is Pierre just signaling right now? Like, so is Pierre talking about re-signing Brandstrom just to make sure that people are getting the cues that they're very interested and happy with his play? Like, maybe that's part of it, right? Like they're pumping his tires a little in the media so that other teams are in hopes that another team might acquire him. Maybe that's tinfoil hat, but okay, but they're gonna have to make a move, Wally. Like they're gonna have to move a player, and I don't know where or who it is yet. But
I understand,
but a lot of salary. I'm agreeing with you, by the way. I'm not fighting you on that.
No. I want Eric Brandstrom, I think, on my team next year. His last 15 games or the time that Thomas Chabot was out.
I'm agreeing with you.
I think he really stepped up. The only issue I have, and this hasn't changed, and I still think that this is an issue, is his play defensively and just not being strong enough.
My issue, Wally, to your point right there, and I'm only cutting you off so I don't lose my thought. Think of this objectively as a playoff team going into the playoffs next year. I mean, I just saw this great article a couple of weeks ago where someone ran all the numbers and analytics, and heavy hockey wins in the postseason.
Yes.
It just does.
Yes.
Like when you're a bigger guy, especially on D, you can have your way with players. It's just the way she goes. And I'm sorry. I know a lot of the people are short kings out there. They really cheer on Branny and, oh, what a great story. He's 5'7". I can be there and I can do it too, because I'm 5'7" and I'm going to back him. I get it. That's what it is. All the guys that are ultra vocal online are all our short kings out there. I've got nothing but respect for you guys, by the way, but it won't win you shit in the playoffs. It just won't. So you can have a player like him back there, but you better bring in some big boys too. That's all I'm saying. Cause I'm looking at this group right now, Wally. It is not a physical group. If I'm a forward, I'm licking my chops when I see that decor, especially if they're not going to have Hamonic in the lineup, who, by the way, I thought was much better than I anticipated. I mean, they're going to have some issues. So, and I'm sure Pierre is aware of that, by the way. I know I'm preaching to the choir. That is not a scary group to play against back there at all.
I don't think Eric Brandstrom would be in the playoffs in the lineup.
Yeah. I mean, maybe. I mean, yeah.
Anyway, but I don't remember you telling me where Travis Hamonic is going to play next year. Where do you have him slotted
I don't know. I'm so torn on this one. And I'm not going to act like I have an answer because I don't. He's
signed, so he's going to be in the lineup.
No, I know. And so is Del Zotto. And I didn't even mind Del Zotto's play. I thought early on in the season, and I'll be critical if I have to be a little bit here, because I thought early on in the season, Michael's play in the D zone wasn't very good. I thought, and that could just be an adjustment thing. You're on a new team. All of a sudden it's not a very good team and they were struggling in net a bit. So everything just
was
seemed
atrocious.
Yeah. So I can't just put all the blame on Del Zotto. Cause I thought he played pretty well and he was lighting it up in the American League. And that does say something. Same with Hamonic. I had my reservations early on and, players talk and you hear stuff from other people, and I'm talking current players. I wasn't just pulling anything out of my rear. I mean, this is legitimate sources, and he proved me wrong too. And that was pleasant. So I don't know what the team's going to do with some of these guys. I'm looking at Hamonic, Zaitsev, and Del Zotto. I don't know what they're going to do with them. So I'm going to leave that up to the group. I'm not a GM, but My job is just to be critical of what's on the ice at the moment and the lineup that they're suiting up. And they need to make some improvements. It's the mediocre I don't want to call them over the hill. They're not over the hill. They're in the NHL, but the mediocre guys that are sort of on their last leg.
Yeah.
I would love it if Ottawa got away from signing those players and just bringing in some legitimate NHL players that have some mileage on them, right? I know you guys always hear me talk about that. Bring in some guys that can contribute right away that are legit.
I think one of those players, Del Zotto, would be more than happy to move on, right? I think there's too much water under the bridge that it would be best off if he wasn't on the roster. And so, which leads me to my point. Which of these players, and because we haven't even mentioned a couple of these players, which players currently under contract for next season have we seen play their last Ottawa Senator game? I'm going to give you 4 players: Matt Murray, Colin White, Nikita Zaitsev, or Michael Del Zotto, or all of them. Have we seen them all play their last game? There's no chance, if you ask me.
Yeah. Well, Murray's not going anywhere. Like, he's, they're not going to buy him out. So he's not going anywhere. I mean, I'm not even going to try to dissect that. We know he's here. So, I'd like to see them part ways with Zaitsev. I think that experiment is over. So I'm just going to lean on this one right now. I think, I don't want to shit talk players like MDZ or Hamannik because they've been around long enough that they deserve that respect. And if they do move on, great, they get an opportunity elsewhere. And they aren't signed to an egregious deal like Zaitsev's. Like Zaitsev's making $4.5 million. I mean, he's $500,000 short of what I was making as a number or as a top pairing D-man. Like it's just, and people can have a legitimate argument on a nightly basis that he shouldn't be in the lineup. Those are the conversations we're having about the player. I think it's time to move on from him. He was DJ's guy. And I think DJ probably would agree with us. Time to move on. Now, how you get rid of him, Wally? You can tell me. I don't know.
Well, that's the problem. People just go, well, just move Matt Murray and just
I know,
move
and
Colin
I'm realistic.
White. You can't. You can't move Nikita Zaitsev because you want to. You need someone to take him.
And I want to be clear. He works like this is a player that I'm not just trying to lump on. Like he works very hard, and you can tell that he cares. He takes it seriously. He takes his game very seriously.
Yep.
It's so chaotic. I mean, and I don't know I think it's a situation where you have a guy who isn't overly skilled, but he's not a very imposing figure on the back end either. Right. So he has to overwork that much more to play a defensive style that he's attempting to play. And it just creates chaos because he gets beat off the walls. He gets knocked over when he goes to lay a hit on a player in the corner. I mean, I figured that out. I figured his game out because I've had the chance to watch these guys so much this year now. He's a smaller guy trying to play a big man game, and it's just not working. Now, if he was better at making plays, if he had better passing ability, more poise with the puck, his play would translate better, but it's just not working. Not here.
Okay. So let me just say this then about Nikita Zaitsev. One, he's, as you said, he's problem-free, doesn't come with, right? He's just a good professional, he doesn't add any kind of excitement, but he does his job. At least tries to do his job.
Yeah.
Is there a chance, Marc Methot, that we are somewhat wrong? And I think of Eric Goodbranson as one of these guys who goes to another team and is suddenly a top 4 guy and everybody's talking well about him. If you just put him with a better player.
He played with Shabbat.
I know he played with Shabbat.
What? He played with an all-star.
He didn't always play with Thomas Shabbat.
Yeah, and then he was severely exposed, more so than when he was playing with Shabbat.
If they had a better system on their blue line, that he would be a serviceable top 6 player.
No chance.
Okay.
No, because you know what you bring up. Well, no. Let me just add really quickly because I don't just want to say no. I want to give you an answer. So look at Goodbranson. Well, what does Goody do that Zaitsev doesn't do? Goody is a tough son of a bitch.
Absolutely.
Who is terrifying to play against. I mean, I've seen his fights up close. Like they're legit. And like, I could be critical of his play when he's handling the puck. Sure. But he's found a role on a good team on a third pairing. He's been put in a position with a realistic role with realistic expectations, and he's thriving with it. Calgary's a much, much better puck possession team than the Ottawa Senators. So Goody doesn't have to worry about handling the puck or over handling the puck.
Yeah.
He just moves it and absolutely punishes people when they're near him. And you're going to see him even more effective and Zadorov in the postseason when they're able to get those big paws on all these opponents. It's just the way it works. So he's found a role. Zaitsev is not that guy. Zaitsev is a different player.
Last player you didn't mention, and neither did anybody at the presser, I think, in the last 2 days, Colin White. Colin White is ignored. He was ignored by, well, even his roommate, Shane Pinto, who listed Pinto, Stützle, and Kostelic and Pinto, obviously, as the top 4, and Norris as the top centers next year. He didn't even mention his roommate. And I understand Whitey's probably a winger at the moment, but there was no mention from Pierre Dorian, and I don't remember any mention from DJ Smith about Colin White.
He barely played.
I know, but he still makes over $4 million a year. Like he
I know,
in a normal world would be mentioned as a significant boost next year when they go, oh, we're going to have Pinto and White back. This will be a much better team. I'm not convinced that Colin White's not back next year. I think he's in the lineup next year at some point.
I think so.
I don't
too.
think they move.
I like Whitey.
I don't know that they move him.
Yeah, like I love the player. I love the individual. I'm a big fan of his because I love his attitude. Attitude is huge. I mean, I can never, that gets downplayed a lot. Well, like the pundits out there will be like, well, I'm sick of hearing these people talk about how good a guy this player is. No, shut up. It makes a big difference. Trust me. Now, do you want a team filled, I should say, with a lot of good guys? I mean, that's not the only indicator, cause for having a player on your team, but he's a glue guy. And if he is not hurting your team or hurting your chances of winning a game, then I mean, it's a good, now $4.5 million. He's a victim of being overpaid, right?
Absolutely.
So no matter what we do or say, people are always going to be hypercritical of him because he's making too much money. And that's just the way she goes. Right. So yeah, we can all agree on that. I don't know that they're going to be, I mean, look at all the players that we're talking about as far as potential buyouts go.
They're not buying out everybody.
Exactly. So you have to keep some of these players. So Colin White is a guy that I'll give the benefit, unless you could move him, which I highly doubt you can, because now he's making too much money and he hasn't proven that he's that reliable health wise.
Okay.
He needs, like, this was his year that he needed to just break out and just keep and quiet all his critics, right? He didn't do that. We're allowed to say this because he quite frankly just didn't do it. So now he needs to have a monster summer. If I'm Whitey, I am focusing on my nutrition. I am focusing on my training, and I'm going to make sure that in training camp, I am one of the fittest players there. Like if you want to stay in the NHL, you have to prove it. You have to make changes. You have to adjust. I don't care. But I know you've had bad luck with injuries. I'm a fan of you, Whitey. Just hit the gym hard, man. Work your tail off this summer. Come to camp ready to rock.
Okay. So you mentioned early on that this team isn't very deep on the roster, right? It's pretty thin. So if they have a couple of injuries, so this is why I think Colin White remains here. You'd probably agree with me. He's an NHL player. So I think you need to have more depth in your roster. You can't just have it filled full of guys who played 2 years in the National Hockey League.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And that's a really good point. Like they're going to have some extra bodies for sure. The reason why I'm talking about potentially trading some of these guys is that they've got too much salary locked in with some of these mediocre players.
Yes, agreed.
I hate calling them mediocre players, but in as far with respect to the salary that some of them are making, they're locked in. And you mentioned earlier, Wally, right? Like some of the guys they have to sign, they're going to have their hands tied. So if they can shed some of that salary, I know I'm stating the obvious, they're going to have to do it. Now, I don't know how. You're going to have to add sweeteners. They've got prospects. They've got picks. They're going to have to make some bold moves. If you want to make that next step, if they want to make that next step as a team collectively, they're going to have to make some bold moves and make a splash. That's the way to do it.
Speaking of taking your next steps, how about looking to landscape your front yard, perhaps redo your front steps? These are always my favorite. I just like your reaction.
There's nothing subtle. You try to make it subtle, but they're not subtle.
How about looking to do a refresh of the front yard or a complete landscape makeover? Need some landscaping, stone, aggregate, maybe thinking of redoing the driveway. Bonisher Excavating here to help with competitive pricing and all your landscape needs. Give them a call, 613-432-1120, or go to bonisherexcavating.com. BEI, helping to shape the Ottawa Valley.
Wally, I forgot to add, this is so stupid of me. Again, my notes. I should probably look at them occasionally.
I keep forgetting about notes.
I know. So am I. The 1/3 buyout with Colin White. How is it that I didn't even think of this? That is the one thing that they have with Whitey right now, right?
I know,
like, so do you not exercise that? Probably.
Maybe, but they're not buying everybody out is my point. So everybody goes, well, just
I know.
buy out
So,
Zaitsev and just buy out Del Zotto.
We know this team wants to save some money. That's an option. I mean, that's one guy.
Okay,
but they're not.
So how many guys do you have in Belleville right now who can be NHL players?
Well, you got to remember of all the injuries too, Wally, right? So like when they finished the season, Connor Brown was hurt. Shane Pinto was still hurt. Matthew Joseph. So you've
right,
got
but we have those guys we have those on the roster next year. Those 3 guys are on our roster. So my point is going into next year,
the roster's full.
No, if you have an injury, how many guys?
No, I understand that. No, I understand that. But I'm saying like you're acting like there's no one left. There's still plenty, and they've got some other young guys now. Typically, a call up should be a young player. You're not calling up a 10-year NHL veteran from Belleville.
I understand, but if they have a significant injury through the year, they don't have right now the depth in Belleville to fill out this roster. We've talked about it all year.
Well, I mean, yeah.
If this is a playoff team, how many of those guys?
I don't agree. I shouldn't say I don't agree. Yeah, you can always have more depth, but like this Victor Lodin, for example, like some of these players, you still have Parker Kelly and Gambrell and Gaudette. Like your bottom 6 is full, and you're going to have a couple extras as it is when the team is healthy. But I get it. A little more depth never hurts you. I'm not disagreeing with you there. But I think we're sort of overplaying that right now. I don't think that's going to be a huge issue. I mean, I'm just trying to remember that that's assuming they go after. I'm saying this with the understanding that they're probably going to go after someone in the summer. So anyway,
right,
whatever.
So show me those players, then we'll talk about moving Colin White.
Fair enough.
Do we do goaltending? Do we even need to get into goaltending?
No, we can all listen. I'll do goaltending for you right now in 10 seconds. Forsberg's your number 1. Matt Murray is going to be flip-flopping with him a little bit, probably. And you're going to have Sogard. Okay. Tell me what they're going to do. I love to hear this.
The problem is, Meth, that Gustafson's on a one-way contract. So
yeah, and he'll have to go down.
Well, so they're saying we're going to bring 3 guys to camp. That's fact. But there's no way they're playing 3 guys on this roster all season.
They said they might. I doubt it though, because
no chance.
That's going to be a nightmare. How do you practice that way with 3 goalies?
You don't.
I don't know if people have to. Yeah, like I've done it before occasionally when there was like a weird situation going on a team, and like one goalie's got to sit on the bench or be out of the way, and then occasionally they'll flip flop with like the backups. They're not getting reps. It's just not realistic for the season. Maybe for the start.
It's bad vibes. It's everything around it. It's just it just causes too many issues. So Dorian said in Ian Mendez's article, which is where I took this from, that he told bluntly Gustafsson in 2021, quote, "You were probably the best goalie to play for the Ottawa Senators. This year, of the 3, you were probably the worst. Find a way to get back to being the best." That's a hard comment. And I know you're a professional goalie. That's a hard comment to take as a young guy. Like,
wait, was that towards Murray?
No, that's towards Philip Gustafsson.
That's what I didn't know that. Okay. So those are some strong words. And Gus is like what, 22 or 23?
Right. So he's now got this in the back of his mind. I think they're going to have to move Philip Gustafsson. I don't see him being able to clear waivers. Well, I might be wrong because other guys have cleared and you're like, oh, I'm surprised. I don't know that he gets to clear waivers because goalies in the National Hockey League are hard to find and you want to pick them up, right?
No, totally, Wally. And my only point to that is as home, like, fans, or rather like an Ottawa Senator fan or any home fan, you know, we always tend to overplay the value of certain players right before we always talk about waivers and is he going to, oftentimes we're overplaying that and they end up going down and teams have a little less of an idea what they're getting. Anyway, long story short, it's going to be interesting to see what they do with those 3. But I think with like Matt Murray's not going anywhere. And I do hope that he figures it out this summer. I do hope that he comes back to camp healthy and strong and feeling good about his game. But right now, this is Forsberg's job. Number 1 goalie right now is Anton. He's run away with it, and he's just kind of creeping into his prime. I love it. The interesting guys will be guys like Mads Sogard and Philip Gustafsson. I don't know what they're going to do with those 2 players because they're making a case to play at the NHL level as well at some point here.
But I don't think Sogard's ready, which is fine.
No. But he's on that trajectory though. Like, look at him, and he's a mutant. Look how tall he is. Like I love his game. So Ottawa's got finally, right? Like we talked about how bad Ottawa's goaltending has been over the last X amount of years, post Anderson, et cetera. And now you're seeing like, okay, we've got a wealth of numbers now on the back end and goal.
No, you don't.
What a great problem to have. This is awesome.
You don't. I disagree. I don't
come
think
on, man.
I don't think Philip Gustafson is ready to play in the National Hockey League. And I'm
not saying they are. I'm not saying they are, Wally, but they're fantastic American League goalies. Look at them. They're all big guys that move well. They cover the net. They're all on the right path. That's a good position to have as an organization. You're not bringing in some journeyman goalie to fill a roster spot. You have them here now. You're good.
But I'm not convinced that they're going to be National Hockey League backups or regulars.
Oh, we'll see. Well, we'll see.
That's
time will tell. I think you'd be surprised. I really do believe at least one of those two will figure it out. I mean, they're so young, Wally. Goalies take time.
But anyway. I totally agree. That and no question, it could be years before we see.
Yes, you're right.
Look at Anton Forsberg, who was pushed around through waivers and finally and now has a arguably. I know you say he's the starter next year.
He is.
I gotta think that they're going to try whatever they can to get Matt Murray to be the starter.
Oh, obviously, but if Forsberg keeps playing the way he is, it's his job. Like he's not losing it. Like that's all I'm saying. Like, Matt Murray's making 6.5 or whatever, but like at the end of the day, who's going to win you the games, right? And I think anyway, we don't have to elaborate much deeper than this. I think Forsberg's the number one.
But the one thing we haven't discussed, and because Matt Murray is now on his 3rd concussion this year, plus he's had previous concussions.
His health.
He may never play. And I don't mean that in a like. There's a chance that I don't know that he recovers. I know he's hoping to, obviously, but the same thing happened to Anders Nielsen. Had his career end with post-concussion symptoms. Like maybe that's a possibility that Matt Murray may not be able to play.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. And I want to make sure, like, I met him a few times there and I saw him. We did that Molson thing there with the team a couple of weeks ago. And I met Murr in the hallway. Really nice guy.
Yes.
Like went out of his way to say hi to me, shook my hand. Like I've got nothing but respect for Murr. Like I said, I hope he figures it out this summer. I would love to have him and Forsberg legitimately battle for a number 1 spot. Like what a great situation if both are healthy.
Matt Murray right now, to me, I'm trying to think here quickly through the roster, might be the one guy I would love to go have whitewater beers with, because I think that he has got an amazing probably story to tell over the last couple of years of how life has transpired.
Oh
right?
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. He's lived through it for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah. We wish him all. We wish him the best.
But if we do it, I'm going to use the Wham-Funky Fresh coupon code and get 15% off.
Oh, you're so shameless. I love it. All right.
By the way,
next,
if you haven't eaten at Whitewater on basically in Cobden,
it's great.
It's phenomenal food.
Our cottage is just down the road from there, and like so we'll go, and even some of my buddies will head down there occasionally when they're out past Arnprior and in Cobden at the location on the water. It's so cool, and they got like nice picnic tables and lights, and the food is terrific. So yes, this is not some like plug here, like well I guess it is, but it's legitimate. We've been there. It's awesome. Check it out.
All right. Before we move on to our Stanley Cup predictions, I would like you to tell me who was the best player for the Ottawa Senators this year.
Oh,
now keep in mind, because I know that you've always said Thomas Chabot is your MVP, but he missed 15 games, I think it is. So overall, throughout this entire, who is your best player?
So for me, it's been between. Well, it's funny you've started off that way. For me, it was between Brady and Thomas Chabot. And I'm trying to figure out, okay, who between the two do I think, is the best or most valuable player, I should say. I've always said it was.
I don't want valuable because that's easy you just pick a D. I want best. I know. I think it was Pierre Dorian who said Forsberg was the MVP.
Yeah.
I want the best player.
It's funny you say that. Because I said, I have it written down right here. Forsberg for me was in the conversation, but he hasn't played enough. You're right. He came on strong here with the team after Christmas. In his own right, maybe in the second half, he'd be your guy.
Yeah.
But I think overall, you look at the whole season, it's got to be Brady. I mean, it just has to be. I'd love to pick some off the board random player here, but mind you, there aren't a whole lot to choose from. But, I got to give the captain the edge. So 79 games, 30 goals, 37 assists, 67 points, 117 PIMs. Like, to me, with the way he plays, that's just so impressive. I mean, you can't ignore it. You go with Norris, right? When you think goal scoring, right? You go, well, Norris had 36 or whatever it was goals. Brady's only 6 behind him.
5.
I mean, it's crazy. Like, he's right there in the conversation. And yet you would attribute goal scoring only to Josh Norris. Brady Tkachuk, for me, is the guy on this team. He's the pulse of the team. Thomas Chabot is right there in the conversation. I don't think Thomas Chabot has had the luxury of playing with the right players consistently throughout the season like Brady has. Brady's had the luxury of playing with Josh Norris and Drake Batherson. Thomas Chabot has not played with Artem Zub all year. Thomas Chabot has had to literally carry some of these players, playing 30 minutes a night, oftentimes injured. So I hate singling out Brady because Thomas deserves that respect as well. So I'm going to give them a 1-2 punch. You could flip-flop him if you like, but I'll probably just give a slight edge to Brady just because of the impact he's had on the ice throughout the season.
You know what? Sometimes it's amazing how wrong you can always be. I believe it's Tim Stützle. I think over the second half of the year,
the best
Tim
player
Stützle was the best player. Not even
you're out of your question. Fucking mind. Oh my God. I mean, he's great. Tim Stützle is the kind of player that all the kids growing up are going to want to wear his jersey, right? He's exciting. He's dynamic. He's got the baby face. Tim Stützle is my favorite player. He's so good. Listen, but you got to be like Wally. You're not a kid. Okay. You are an adult.
Ask
with
my wife.
Kids the same age as Tim Stützle. You have kids his age. Listen, there's no denying Tim Stützle's impact in that second half. I mean, I think we're forgetting some of the growing pains surrounding him early on in the season that Brady did not have. Brady may have started off a little slow because he missed camp and all that, but he was pretty good right from the get-go. Tim Stützle, it took a while for him to get going. And then in the second half, he played out of his mind. So, I'm looking at consistency and I'm not using recency bias. I'm looking at the whole season, and I don't appreciate you telling me that I couldn't be more wrong. Listen, I went with the captain.
Listen, Tim Stützle finished second on the team in scoring. He played the same number of games as Brady, and he's a 22 goal scorer. Like,
I know, and he's far more skilled, right? So
yes,
I would expect him to have more points as a centerman with equal opportunity on the power play.
But he doesn't get the same amount of ice time.
Now, yeah, I agree with you. And we're probably going to have a different this may be a different answer next year, but for now, and I like that you picked Stützle because it's spicy and we're having this discussion, and I'm sure it wasn't coordinated, but
no,
we'll agree to disagree. I think it's Brady. You think it's Stützle, both fantastic players. And I'm not hating on either of them. Yeah. By the way, the last game, Tim Stützle, I didn't know his goal song was Du hast Rammstein. Did they just implement that? Is that a new thing?
I'm going to go with yes. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm a huge Rammstein fan. Like, I listen to them in the gym all the time. So
shout out to all their albums.
No, you don't.
Anyway, the reason I say Tim Stützle, by far the most exciting player, obviously I think he's most dynamic, is just watching him evolve in the second half. He was just in a different world. So overall, that's why I went with him. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm with you. So much fun to watch. Like I've heard people write down, there's been some takes where he puts fans in their seats, or rather gets them out of their seats, whatever, however you want to word it. I'm agreeing with that. I do think Brady's also that player, but Tim Stützle in the dynamic sense, whereas Brady's probably more of the mix up scrums, fights type of guy. But in any case, both very, very good players.
Okay. If you have your $300 to go to the team store and to buy one jersey of the Ottawa Senators. They're all sold out of the Marc Methot number 3. So which jersey do you pick?
Oh, I'm not buying a Methot jersey. Don't worry. Whenever I see somebody at the games, when they'll come up to me, they'll be wearing one, and I'll thank them. I'm like, thank you for wearing my jersey. Thank you. Right now, I'd probably buy a Chabot jersey. Yeah. I mean, I'm a big Chabot fan. Batherson too. Like, when I'm in this, and I'm saying this because everyone's got a Tkachuk and Stützle jersey. When I'm at the games and I'm sitting up there, and you've been to a few this year, Wally, Craig's been to a few as well. I mean, you guys see it. It's just Brady Tkachuk everywhere. I'd like to go off a little bit and get something a little different. Chabot, Batherson would be probably my picks. I'm a huge Batherson fan.
Yeah. And Drake, I think, is the choice I would make too. My son has a Kachuk jersey. I would probably, if I wasn't so cheap, get a Drake Bathurst jersey. That's and plus he's a Maritimer.
Good point.
So, okay. We'll throw it out here this way. I don't believe your answer is going to change than it has all the rest of the season. But before we get to Stanley Cup odds, do the Ottawa Senators make the postseason next year based on what you know at the moment?
No chance. And I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong, because I would love to be able to do this show and do TSN stuff in the off season or postseason, but I just don't know that they're good enough for that yet. I think they're going to be, and it was interesting. I think Pierre made a comment, or one of them made a comment similar to what I've been saying for a long time. Just be in the conversation. I think if the team is in the conversation going into the spring, it's a success. I just want to see progression. I don't want to see the team take a step back. The team as a whole did not take a step forward this year. The team core-wise, individually, took a step forward. And I think that's probably more important anyway, right? Like, we want to see the team succeed and get better incrementally every year. But I think for me, I just wanted to see your young guys get better, and then you can build around them. So I think for me, expectation playoffs next year, they're going to be just outside looking in. Pleasant surprise / bonus if they happen to sneak in. But look at the teams. Look at the teams they have to leapfrog. I had it written down here.
All 8 teams had 100 points, right?
Right. But never mind the fact that teams like Buffalo, Detroit are also in rebuilds right now, and they may surprise you next year. I mean, Buffalo is building around Owen Power. He's terrific. He's a real good player. And then Mo Seider, Mike Calder choice. Detroit's building around him. They're good. They're going to be a good team, and they're offensive. They can score goals. So, I mean, you got to think they're going to be Ottawa's going to be battling against all these teams. I'm not saying that all these teams are going to be better. I'm just saying nothing's going to be handed to them. And I really do see them falling somewhere around 10, maybe 11 in the East, probably.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think you're wrong. I think you're pretty spot on.
Is that fair? I mean, I'm assuming you're probably thinking the same thing.
Well, I don't know which. There's probably going to be one of those 8 teams that are in the postseason that doesn't make it next year, right? That's always the case.
And Wally, I'll ask you this, because I'm looking at them too, right? I'm looking at a team like Boston, Washington. People, it's the same thing, right? Well, they're getting a little old now, and I'm not disagreeing with that. But are players like Marchand and Bergeron just going to fall off the map next season? I mean, unless they're injured, I don't see it happening. Same with Washington. Ovi just seems to play through just about anything every year. So who do you think is going to drop off? I don't see it.
Well, that's just it, right? Is it Pittsburgh? Right? I don't know. We keep counting Pittsburgh out
Pitt's
every
another
year.
Good example, but you can't write off Sidney Crosby and Malkin. They're just their leadership ability alone. They make everyone so good. We'll see. I'm open to it, but I really do see them. I think you're agreeing with me, right? 10, 11, maybe 9.
I just don't know who they bump out if they were to get into the postseason.
I hope they do.
Yeah. No, it should be, if they can get off to a good start that we talked about, it should be an interesting year to say the least.
Right.
All right. On to our Stanley Cup round 1 predictions, brought to you by sportsinteraction.com. Go to sportsinteraction.com/Wally and Methot. The most competitive live daily odds. They have all the odds up there, obviously, because they start tonight, but go there, check them out, and see just the odds. Now, there are a couple of interesting ones. The Colorado-Nashville game is a complete one-sided affair where Colorado is -500 and Washington's +345. The spread is crazy. Is there any chance that Colorado doesn't get out of round 1?
There is a chance, but I have Colorado winning in 6. That's my pick.
Okay.
Best team in the West. Problem is they've had injuries. They've been dealing with some injuries. Landeskog is a question mark. He's probably, other than McKinnon, he's probably the pulse of the team. He's the clear-cut leader.
For
sure. The thing that I like about Colorado, though, is, and what makes them so freaking dangerous, is they're just so balanced offensively. They get production from a lot of players. So they have, through their 4 lines, a ton of balanced scoring, but Rantanen, McKinnon, Landeskog, all over 30-goal seasons. They've got so many weapons, never mind the back end with Taves and Makar. I think the X factor for me has been their goalie too. With Kemper and not only that, but with Nashville, they've had issues in goal. They've had inconsistencies with Rittich and Cerro. So I'm not going to go any deeper. That's probably enough information that Sens fans want to hear. I've got Colorado in 6. Who do you have?
Well, and Saros was hurt down the stretch. I meant to look it up if he's back or not, and I apologize.
The two of them combined is over 3 goals a game average between him and Rittich. So they're going to let some goals in. I
have one of the issues I have is I watched Ottawa be a President's Trophy winner and struggle in the playoffs. You saw Tampa roll through the regular season, and then all of a sudden they hit Columbus, and they have this record-setting season, and they're swept. At one point, there's going to be an upset in this first round. You've got Roman Josi and head-to-head with.
You think that upset is the Stanley? Like, we're talking about a Stanley Cup winner.
I know. I'm on the fence here. I want to lean towards Colorado, but there's going to be some upset.
But it ain't that serious.
But Nashville plays a heavier game.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I don't think they're good enough. I mean, come on. Like, we're talking about Colorado. They're arguably the best team in the league outside of maybe Florida, but even then you can make an argument. So I just don't see it happening.
Colorado in 7.
Okay. Did you just come up with that on the spot?
Yeah, I have not written anything down. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
All I wrote
move
down
on to
was
the next series.
Who's playing who? All right.
So what we'll do, Wally, we don't need to go super in depth with all of them. I'll give you some
the rest
good
of them
details
with
the spicy series, like the good ones. The obvious ones, I'll give you some info, but then otherwise we can brush through the others.
We'll just finish off the West here. Calgary against Dallas, who's the wild card spot number 1. So again, it's a pretty big spread. I don't think there's any issue for me. It's Calgary probably in 5.
Yeah, I got Calgary in 6 only because I love the way Dallas has been playing, and I'm a little partial. You know, I've lived there, played there. I love the team, but the storyline for me, it's simple in that series. It's Tkachuk and I want to say a guy like Jamie Benn too. I mean, he's going to be an option. Then of course they've got Robertson and Hintz, and they've got Pavelski. They've been very good this season, so it'll be interesting. But Calgary is just so good. They're so deep and heavy, and that back end is imposing. I'm going to go with I keep saying Colorado. I'm going to go with Calgary in 6.
I know you want Colorado to win. I know it. Just
no, I don't. I don't.
Minnesota, St. Louis. Minnesota comes in as the higher seed. Sports Interaction thinks that they're going to win this one. What do you think?
This is an interesting one because I had St. Louis winning in 6, and then I talked to a couple players, and one in particular was like, "No, I think Minnesota is going to win that one." And right away, I'm thinking like, "Oh God, okay, what have I done wrong?" But I'm sticking with my pick. I'm going with St. Louis in 6. That would have been for me. There's 2 upset series, and it's the Pittsburgh series and the Minnesota series.
You can't tell me Pittsburgh yet.
Well, no, but I'm not saying that I'm going with Pittsburgh. I'm just saying to me in the entire. Anyway, I'm going with St. Louis in 6.
St. Louis in 6. I want Minnesota to win this one. I think those fans deserve it. Minnesota in 7.
And that I like that pick. I do.
Finally, it's Edmonton, LA. There's no chance I am taking the Edmonton Oilers because they don't do anything exciting for me. So I still, while they are a -250 on this one, I think it's LA. I'm going with LA.
Oh my God. That is going to be such a cold shit take. Anyway, I've got Edmonton in 6. I want to make sure it was in 6 because there's reasoning behind these numbers. Yeah.
I know they played well down the stretch. I know when they had the change in coach.
And listen, and Mike Smith is healthy. They've actually figured out their goaltending to a degree, but I mean, this is their 3rd straight year, right? So they're hungry. They have something to prove. And there's pressure on McDavid and Draisaitl to figure this out. And so for the challenge for me is that they're facing 2 defensively sound centers. You're looking at a guy like Phil Deneau, Anze Kopitar. They're very good 2-way players. That'll be a concern. That is another series that another current player told me the team might put up some fits towards Edmonton. LA is a team that could cause fits. But then you look at the season series, Edmonton took a 3-1. Like they were fairly soundly better than LA. So goaltending will be a big factor, but I think with me and Edmonton and how motivated they are, and even their back end, there were question marks there. Even CC's figured it out a little bit. They've got some veteran presence on the back end. I like Edmonton.
No, until Edmonton can show me that they can do it, I can't pick them. I just think that they rely too much on 2 big stars, which is fair, that they don't have the depth.
That's fair. But that's how they're built, right? And if those 2 big stars are on their games, look out.
in Meth, I watch the Sens dominate the Leafs every year in the regular season and win like all 4 or 6 meetings and then lose them every time in the playoffs. I don't know that the regular season matters anymore.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
All right. Moving on to the East. Let's start with the President Trophy winning Florida Panthers taking on, which seems weird, the wild card number 2 spot, Washington.
Yeah.
This is a huge spread, obviously. Florida minus 313, Washington plus 233.
Yep.
This isn't even close to me. I think it's a 5-game series with Florida.
Ooh. Wow. So no respect for Washington, huh?
No, none.
Okay. Well, I'm going to keep this one fairly quick then, because I mean, the Panthers had 22 points or something ridiculous this season. So I've got Florida in 6 only because Washington is experienced. If they were a little more green, I'd probably take Florida in 5, but I really do think that Florida right now with their goaltending might hurt them a little bit. Bobrovsky's been a little inconsistent. Yes, he's been pretty good toward the end, but I see that as a question mark. I do. Is Ekblad returning? I mean, if they have him back in the lineup and even anything close to healthy with that back end with players like Sherratt, Weegar, and Forsling, where they all fall back down into their proper positions, that's deadly. And then, obviously we know their forward group. I'm not even going to go off on them. And but the biggest thing aside from their superstars, and when I say their superstars, Huberdeau, Barkov, Reinhart, I'm looking at their depth scoring. Duclair, Verhaeghe, Bennett, Marchment, Lundell, all had over 40-point seasons. Like they're so deep. So I'm going to go with Florida. This is a no-brainer, 6 games.
The only issue, Meth, that I may have in this is that Florida hasn't had any kind of struggles this year, right? Everything was just really easy for the most part. Yeah, they lost 3 in a row, but they didn't really have a whole lot to deal with. Sometimes you get into the postseason without having had any of that stuff, you struggle a little. But
well, you're right. But you can't, that's a projection, right? Like based off of what we have right now and the data we have right now. I mean, to me, it's like Florida and Colorado are those 2 teams, right? From the respective conferences. It's up to them whether they want to win or lose these games. Right. So anyway.
All right. So the Rangers and Pittsburgh, it's really even. If there's,
I know this is a tough one. This is one of the ones I was talking to you about.
Right. So the Rangers are favored, but minus 104, Pittsburgh's minus 116. It's basically flat. So
experience in Pittsburgh, youth,
Shesterkin
and emergence in New York. And then the deal breaker is the goaltending, right?
Right.
Shesterkin, like, come on.
So
he's legit. Like we're talking Vezina. He's the Vezina winner this year.
People are talking with the heart.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, if he continues his play with the depth that team has, I always talk about depth. I mean, I feel like all these teams are deep, but I really think with them, I'm going to give them the edge. Goaltending being the X factor. For me, Wally, I'll let you tell me your pick right after. I got New York in 6.
I want Mika Zibanejad to do well, our good friend, and so I'm going to take the Rangers.
Okay.
Do they force it to 7? I think it might go.
You can
7.
make an argument. Yeah. You can there's an argument to be had there for sure, but this is all bullshit. Like picking winners.
No,
is
we
one
know.
thing.
We know everything.
No, but I'm not saying we don't know everything. Like, what I'm trying to say is picking the winners. That's there, you've got information to work with, but like when it comes to the games, I mean, it's a crapshoot really. Anywhere from 5, 6, and 7, you're just rolling the dice. There's no real science behind it. Yeah.
So Carolina, Boston, Carolina's the favorite in this one. Boston's a wild card number 1. Boston concerns me because they just will fight and claw their way through this. I'd like to see Carolina win. I will take a Carolina victory in this one.
So,
but
okay. How many 6 games? So I had Carolina in 6 as well, but the question mark is Freddie Anderson. I mean, this guy, he hasn't proven that he can win in the postseason. Like, I'm sorry. He's been pretty bad in the postseason and now he's hurt. Like, he's got the postseason flu or something, right? Like he just doesn't want to be the guy. So I was very reluctant to pick Carolina here. Boston is a team that just knows how to win and they step up. I'm starting to think I want to change my pick, but I'm going to stick with Carolina only because they're just so deep up front. So I'm just going to, and Carolina is a hard building to play in there for whatever reason. It just is. So I got Carolina in 6. Sorry, Boston fans. I want to pick Boston, but I just think Carolina is going to be too much.
I agree. Boston's a tough out though, boy. Okay, finally, because this will go well, I'm assuming. Toronto, Tampa. Listen, now this is the same thing with Edmonton for me. So I'm going to go first. So Toronto's the favorite, minus 130, Tampa plus 100. The two-time defending Stanley Cup champions, I might add. It's for me until Toronto can prove that they're not a first-round exit. It's the Tampa Bay Lightning all day long, and not because Nick Paul is one of my favorite human beings. I am taking the Tampa Bay Lightning in this one with Andrei Vasilevsky in goal, not Jack Campbell, to be the victors in this one. It may go tight. If it goes 7, there's no chance for Toronto. I'm going to say it's 6 games with Tampa.
Wow. Well, yeah,
they play soft, Matt. They are the softest playoff team in the postseason.
Yeah. Well, okay. So that's the question then. Can Toronto just pull it together this year? Right. I do think, I got to say this. I do think Kyle Dubas has done a great job putting this team together. I mean, you're building a team, you win did they win the President's Trophy last year? Year before?
No.
Year before? They were right up there. Weren't they one of the best teams? No. During the bubble, they were the best team in the bubble. Doesn't really mean very much, obviously, because they were just Canadian teams. But in any case, I think he's put together a very competitive team. The question mark obviously will be team toughness, maybe. Yeah. And the defense, biggest question mark is goaltending. I legitimately think this is Tampa's series to lose. I have Tampa winning in 7, only because Toronto is pretty deep, especially in scoring. And Austin Matthews it's undeniable. He's had 60 goals. I just don't think this is going to be Toronto's year. I think they've been dealt a very bad hand, bad luck facing the Tampa Bay Lightning in the first round. I don't see it either. I don't see them coming through. I'm going to be cheering nightly against them. I don't think they stand a chance in hell to win this series. It's going to be very close. Obviously, I got them in 7, or Tampa in 7, but I mean, guys, like I'm looking at players like Mitch Marner, for example. I mean, Austin Matthews will only be as good as Mitch Marner plays, right? Mitch Marner, the disher, finding the open ice, creating space for Matthews. I don't see it happening. I think Vasilevsky's going to be a monster. I think Toronto's going to get absolutely waxed.
I don't argue with you because the only point I argue is Toronto got bad luck. If you're going to win the Stanley Cup, you got to go through the best regardless of what round.
No, I know, but when you're playing a two-time Stanley Cup champion back-to-back years, you got to kind of scratch your head a little bit and be like, well, how did this just happen? So this couldn't happen to a better team. I am happy that Toronto is facing two-time Stanley Cup champion, the Tampa Bay Lightning. I think you're going to see a lot of crying after a couple games. I think you're going to see a lot of excuses. I think you're going to see a lot of Toronto Maple Leaf flags being torn off the vehicles that are driving up and down the streets that we're seeing around the city. It's going to be pathetic. Anyway, the point is, I've got Tampa winning this series. It's a no-brainer. And the epic Toronto Maple Leaf collapse that we're about to witness is going to be glorious.
Listen, Kyle Dubas is about to stop following me on Twitter if you continue to say these.
No, I like Kyle. Kyle's a good dude. And I'm obviously having fun, but yeah. I do find the fan base incredibly annoying and obnoxious. I do. I don't have any time for them at all.
Okay. So what happens if Toronto wins? Are you going to apologize?
No, I'm just going to say, well, we expected them to win. They should have won that series. So it's not on me, right? Like I'm always right, no matter what the scenario, as you know. So
yeah.
So there's no way for me to be wrong in this case. It's just a matter of, if they win the series, they did what they were supposed to do, and good for them. But are you kidding? I mean, if they do happen to get by, they're going to get rinsed at some point, whether it's now or in the next series.
Okay. Last question. Well, let's just hand out some awards before we get, you already said that you think Morris Seider is the Calder Trophy winner for the season. I do. There's Michael Bunting, Zegras, Lucas Raymond, if you will.
His numbers are just too good for a defenseman. And I've watched him play. He looks like a 10-year NHL veteran. Like I don't see a rookie in his play, and he's physical.
Yes.
Give it to a defenseman. Give it to a D-man.
So I know, because I know you're partial to the D. I want Trevor Zegras to win it because I think he's the most exciting thing to be in hockey in the last couple of years.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with that. I think he's great for the game too. I just don't want him to win it. I want to see a defenseman win it.
My pick is Trevor. I know Trevor Zegras isn't going to win it, but he would be my pick. The Norris Trophy, and the only reason this is arguably the hardest, I think, of all the trophies to be picking right now.
It's
clearly between Cale Makar, and Roman Josi.
Yeah.
It was Cale Makar's at the beginning of the year. For the first half of the year, nobody said anything about anybody else. And then Roman Josi went on a tear.
And I've seen different takes from like legitimate analysts and like people flip-flopping a little bit. I watched Roman play when they came to Ottawa. Based on that game alone, it made me very unsure because he's not super dynamic. Like when you watch a player like Cale Makar, you go, wow, like he can get you out of your seat with some of the plays he makes, kind of like Erik Karlsson when he was in his prime. Like his dynamic ability from a standstill position to spin off a player, take 4 steps, and he's already lost the man, right? Like that's what Cale Makar can bring to the game. Roman Josi, for me right now, it's the points, it's the poise, it's the patience with the puck. Like he's really good at doing that and slowing the play down. I mean, the 4 points short of 100 at 96 was very impressive and undeniable. Crazy. So I know on the broadcast weeks ago, I picked Roman Josi. I'm going to stay with that just because you're 4 points shy as a defenseman in modern day NHL post salary or current salary cap era. Like I don't know how you can flip a coin, but I'm going to go with Roman Josi because of the points. I'll stop kind of tiptoeing around it. That's why I'm picking him.
For me, it's Roman Josi. It's not even close.
Yeah.
The point total is one thing, but I just think he controls the game. Like the Nick Lidstroms we used to talk about all the time, right?
It's slow and it's not slow. It's just very meticulous and composed
methodical
and methodical. Thank you. And that's, and he's not playing on a team like Colorado either, right? Like look at the players that he's played with, look at the team. Like he's basically carried Nashville into the postseason. Like basically, right? I know, he's not alone. There's other great players in the team, but he's done the job mostly on his own. So to me, that speaks volumes.
Matt Duchene will argue with you.
No, I know. There's other players. Forsberg is another, but he's 100 points.
So league MVP. And this is the first year, Matt, that I can think of. There's just name after name being thrown out there, right? It seems like it's not a 1-2 type, like Matthews, McDavid, Huberdeau, Johnny Gaudreau, even, although that's not one for me. Right. Roman Josi has been mentioned, and Igor Shesterkin, the goalie. Wow. Like, where do you pick the guy? Do you pick the guy that led the league in points? Is it I'm not sure where you go.
Yeah, this one pains me, Wally. This one pains me a lot. I'm going to probably have to go with Austin Matthews. I mean, 60 goals. I mean, how do you that is so impressive. I don't know. I don't care who you are. And I love McDavid. I'm a huge fan of a lot of the players that have been spoken of and thrown into the mix and into the conversation. But I think for me, 106 points, you're looking at a player that has accomplished something that I don't know what the numbers are. Not very many have done. So to me, 60 goals, there's your answer. The conversation is over. Give it to him this season. He's deserved it. He's put up the numbers.
Just quickly, Austin Matthews became the first 60 goal scorer in a decade and the first US born player to hit the mark.
Right. Exactly. I mean, that's it. That says the story right there. And that I think it's disingenuous to go against that.
Yeah. And for me, you know what? I agree. I think it is Austin Matthews. One, he's dynamic, but two, 60 goals coming off of the year we just had going through the COVID stuff. Like, it's an impressive feat. There's no question about it. He would be my guy. But it's funny. We just look at Connor McDavid as an afterthought.
I know. Well, that's the power of scoring goals, right? And McDavid, I don't know what was it. I don't know I don't know what his numbers were after Christmas, but it feels like I saw him a lot less on the highlights, every day. But I know he's still a terrific player.
I know it's weird.
Player to watch. If you're going to ask me which player to go watch, like if the Edmonton Oilers are playing on any given night or the Toronto Maple Leafs are playing, I'm going to go watch McDavid because I want to watch him play. The dynamic speed and ability to handle the puck with that speed and some of the moves he makes are just mind blowing. So, I think he's a more exciting player to watch, but Austin Matthews, with the goals this year is undeniable. Got to go with him.
Last point I want to ask you about because you're a D-man. This is the highest scoring season in 26 years with an average of 6.3 goals per game. 17 players scored 40 or more goals, the most in 26 years.
Crazy.
That includes 9 players who hit the mark for the first time. 137 players have scored 20 plus goals, the most in NHL history. 102 hat tricks were scored. Why is goal scoring up so much this year? It can't just be that you're not allowed to cross check the guy in the back in front of the net. There has to be another reason.
I think you're just seeing the game itself evolve from when they've changed the rules to where they're at now, where it's younger. There's so much speed. Everybody's skilled. Like there's so much more skill in the game now than there was. Like you're looking at some of these players on third lines, fourth lines even, and there's some legitimate guys that can score goals. Mix that in with the officiating, firmer on infractions as far as like holding, sticking penalties, all that stuff. Like they've made adjustments, and you got to give the league credit for that. They're not shy to tweak the rules to better the game over the years. Like they're constantly evolving. They're not stuck in their ways. They have the foresight to understand that, goal scoring, it makes this game more exciting. And you're seeing it now. So like I said, a combination of players coming into the NHL, far more skilled. Look at the decors around the league. I mean, they're not as big and imposing anymore. They're not as difficult to play against at net front, as you mentioned. That is not the only reason, but it's certainly part of it. So players have more time and space. Factor in, they're more skilled, better shots, better shooting, better equipment. I mean, it's going to continue at this pace, probably.
It's a less physical sport for sure, God, but the speed of it, it's so much better.
Brady. Look at guys like Brady right now, right? Like they're out there having their way and they look like absolute heavyweights. It's crazy. And that's not me acting like some old head that's reminiscing on the old days. I was not a tough guy by any means. But you're just seeing it now, right? Like these players, these types are far and few. And the guys that would fight all the time, they're slowly becoming more and more extinct. They're just not in the NHL anymore. Like you think of a tough guy now, there aren't a lot of them. There's maybe a handful in the NHL. So the game's evolving. It's evolving for the better, and there's more scoring, and I'm all for it.
8 players have collected 100 plus points. That's the most in 26 years. 6 of those players for the first time, and 4, by the way, haven't turned 26 years old yet. It is certainly a young man's game, but it is fun to watch. Again, it's been a fun season. This has been an exciting year with all the goal scoring, with the play of young players, with Trevor Zegras trying to start something a little more exciting. I think you're seeing it throughout the league. It's been fun. At least it excites me to watch this game. For a few years, it was like this game is dull and boring and people are turning away.
Yeah, no, it's getting a lot better. And I'm happy that it's evolving that way, Wally, because I know with my kids, I'm going to want them to play, and knowing that they're, more focused on headshots now. There's less nonsense, less bullshit as far as expecting players to fight. Like when I came into the NHL, that was always the expectation. So it's evolving for the better. We can all agree on that. I'm excited to see how it, goes forward, particularly with Ottawa.
You'd say it's less of a gong show. By the way, you could go to gongshow.ca and get your Wally Methot gear. They have all the latest fashion. Plus they have, I don't know if you get this in time, they've got Mother's Day gifts you can get there with hockey mom hats and t-shirts, plus the new spring line is out. Go see their collaborations, gongshowgear.ca for all your hockey apparel needs. Finally, Meth, before we go, Stanley Cup winner. Who is going to win the Stanley Cup this season?
Why don't you go first? Gives me a minute to maybe change my decision.
Oh, see, and normally it would have been Colorado, and I would have just been clear cut for me. I want to see Florida win, but it's going to be someone we don't expect, is what I think. So I'm going to, here's where I'm going out on a limb. I didn't even give this any thought. The New York Rangers will be the 2022 Stanley Cup champions.
Wow. You're going to look like Nostradamus if you get this right, Wally. That's not at all what I had in mind. I hate picking obvious ones. So, Colorado would have been an option for me, I think, at some point, but I like Tampa. I do like Tampa. I think if Tampa moves on beyond Toronto, they're in the conversation at all, but I have to pick one, and I got to stop tap dancing around this. I'm going to go with the Calgary Flames.
It's not a bad call, right? They play heavy.
You know what? I'm going to go with
scoring.
Calgary because I want to cheer for a Canadian team. I liked, so the three teams that I do like, as I just mentioned, I like Tampa. I like Florida. Maybe out of fourth. I like Colorado, but Calgary to me is the dark horse that I think people are sort of ignoring right now. So I'm going to go with the Calgary Flames. Yeah.
They were my second choice. Good call.
There you go.
All
right.
We'll see in 2 months how this all plays out.
Okay.
See you, pal.
Bye.